Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWireTV interview. Today I'm joined by Damon Tompkins. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at Delinea, and Wahab Yusoff, the Vice President Asia Pacific and Japan at Delinea, who are currently visiting Australia. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. So let's start at the beginning. What is Privileged Access Management, or PAM? Why is it so important? And how is it different and better than traditional cybersecurity solutions?
Sure, great question. So privileged access management really encompasses the discipline of managing what visibility and access different individuals and systems have into your information assets. And so the idea is to make sure that you don't have too much privilege for users or machines to gain access to systems or have authorizations that individuals should not have, whether they're internal employees or external folks coming into your environments. What it allows you to do is really implement a system or a concept known as least privilege, where where users and machine identities have just the right amount of access for just the appropriate ability to do the work that is required for that individual or system on any given information asset. And so what's different about this is that a lot of organizations focus on perimeter security. This has been sort of the ethos of much of cybersecurity for many, many years. But increasingly, as you start to think more and more about where your attack surface lies and where most compromises happen, it's within identity. So it really comes down to the individual or the system and their credentials that he or she or that system has to gain access to your information assets. And so what's unique about privileged access management is it really starts at the lowest common denominator of where security lives. And that's really around identity and security management at an identity layer. And what we're talking about very specifically is often passwords and password management. And so privileged access management helps you automate and enforce rules and offer automation around the management of identities by way of passwords and password management.
And Wahab, did you want to make any comments?
Yes, I think to add to what Damon just said, I think what's critical about it is that the bulk of the breaches that we experience today, if you ask the CIO, CXO level, occurs at that point, right? Where you have access to the system, access to the network. So it becomes a critical aspect of cybersecurity. Now, cybersecurity, of course, has a huge ecosystem, huge access threat landscape. And so it's critical, it's important that you address this issue about access.
Okay, so I can see that the Delinea site explains that you protect critical data, you secure sensitive code, you secure endpoints and devices, and control cloud access across a wide range of security issues. So which of these products and services would you like to highlight to viewers right now?
Sure. So the flagship products are Secret Server. So Secret Server is a vaulting technology. It allows you to go out, discover all the credentials, whether they're human credentials or machine credentials as code, anywhere where privileged credentials exist with your environment. Once you've done that discovery, it allows you to go up, grab up those credentials, bring them into a 256 encrypted vault, 256 military grade encrypted vault, and then adds a layer of automation around how users and systems interact with those credentials. So whether it's machine-to-machine interactions or whether it's humans interacting with sensitive credentials to gain access to certain systems, Secret Server can bring a layer of automation and protection around that aspect of it. The second part of that equation is really around this idea of zero trust or least privilege. And this is becoming an increasingly popular topic here in the Asia Pacific markets around the Essential 8 requirements. And so we have a product set called Cloud Suite. Cloud Suite allows you to consolidate identities back to your core identity store, which is more often than not Active Directory. So whether that's Azure AD or prem-based AD, we allow you to go out and find Linux, Unix, cloud credentials, any type of credentials that aren't necessarily associated with your Active Directory, and then tie them back, a term that's commonly known as Active Directory bridging. And then we allow you to deprecate a lot of the credentials, the standing credentials on those assets, and broker access just in time into those systems. So reducing standing privilege is a big way to reduce the threat attack surface in your environment. And the way that you do that is then by brokering access for just-in-time sessions with ephemeral credentials. And that's done through Cloud Suite and Server Suite. They're the two core flagship products. And then we have a series of sort of supporting products that allow you to add different types of capabilities like lifecycle management from provisioning to decommissioning, as well as deprecating local Windows admin rights on machines like the laptop that we're joining each other here on today, and then granting back specific capabilities to those machines so people have just the right amount of privilege for whatever their responsibilities are within an organization.
Yeah, I was going to say it's amazing we didn't think of doing this in the security world from the beginning, but back in the early days, things were a lot more innocent, and in the modern world, this is the approach that we have to take.
Yeah, frankly, it for me personally, I've been involved in selling cybersecurity products for over 25 years, and what we kind of laugh about, and I guess it's not funny, but we get sort of a kick out of it, is that a lot of the challenges that organizations face today are really the same challenges that companies were trying to grapple with 25 years ago. So who is this person? What access should they have to our systems? Are they an employee? Are they a contractor? You have people who are joining the organization, moving roles in an organization, leaving an organization. How do we, provision them onto the systems, make sure they have the right amount of authority while they're in their role? And then how do we remove their credentials when they leave the organization? And these challenges have only grown over time. So what's really different about today than it was maybe 25 years ago is now you have cloud and you have all the corresponding technologies that come along with cloud. You have privilege as code inside of CI/CD pipelines and DevOps workloads. And then you start to seeing this world where increasing amount of OT and IoT devices that are at the edge that are non-traditional compute that have identities. If you think about it, every single IT asset that you have in your organization has an admin layer level password. So even if, like in your personal life, you go down to Best Buy and you buy a router to set up at your home, that has an admin level account on it. And if you have the password of that admin level account, well, then you have godlike authority over that device. Every single database, every single application, every single firewall, every OS, everything across your organization has admin layer level accounts, and probably multiple admin level accounts. And so it's a real challenge for organizations to identify those accounts and make sure that the password hygiene and how users interact with those accounts operate.
Similar to Damon, I think I've been in business for quite a long time, covered endpoint security, network security, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with a similar type of problems as we did many, many years ago. And password management, as Damon was referring to, remains one of the key issues that we're facing right now. And we typically tend to relate it to password management for humans, right? And we forget about the application services, the machine aspect of password management. So these are the things which are affecting us, and it's exacerbated by all of the things, the IoT stuff, the increasing threat landscape. It's getting a bit complicated. So it becomes more important now than ever to address privilege access.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Delinea started in 2021 as the unification of two leading PAM providers, Thycotic and Centrify. So how has this merger been going, and how is the company seen by players such as Gartner?
Yeah, great. So the merger's gone fantastically well. And I can say that with a straight face. I've been through mergers throughout my career that did not go well. This has been actually quite phenomenal. And the reason why is that the two companies were highly complementary to each other in a variety of ways. So if you looked at the product portfolio at face value, you would have said, well, this just seems like a market consolidation. Both these companies are in the privilege access management space. So this is just sort of combining two companies to take market share. But that's not the case at all. In fact, Thycotic was largely focused around the vaulting technology. So the ability to put secrets inside of an encrypted vault and then add automation around that vault, like we spoke about before. Centrify was more focused on identity consolidation and privilege escalation. So not necessarily vaulting, although they had a vaulting technology. The core of the company was really about going out and creating that bridge and then brokering access to assets along the way. And so from a product overlap perspective, very little. So that we rationalized the products very quickly. And we're actually going to be announcing a public preview of a consolidated control plane that's delivered through SaaS, where each of our discrete applications will snap into that control plane. So it will be the first sort of end-to-end privilege platform that will be delivered by way of SaaS. But what's exciting about it is that not the control plane is in SaaS. So if you still have requirements or you have reservations about having some of your secrets in a SaaS tenancy, you can maintain your premise-based repositories, but still interact through the UX in the cloud. So from a product innovation standpoint, very quick to respond, very quick to start iterating and evolving the combination of the two companies. From a go-to-market perspective, Thycotic was really well known in the mid-enterprise and some of the SMB markets, and Centrify was very well known in the sort of top end of the market, the Fortune 250 or Global 500 type organizations. Mm-hmm. So the sales organizations were highly complementary as well. So we were able to merge that very quickly and find sort of efficiencies as well as complementary abilities between the two companies. So, all in all, it's been a fantastic journey, and we're really excited about the future of the company.
Yeah. So if I may add to that, on the ground, I think from the market perspective, we're seeing customers accepting our solutions much better and much faster because of the end-to-end solutioning that Damon was mentioning about. So PAM is actually a journey, right? So typically start with vaulting, password management, but the feeling that they need to get a bit more granular. They need to have more control. Just-in-time password management is one of the aspects. Zero trust is the other, which is driving a lot of this. So acceptance on the ground, we're seeing across Asia Pacific, particularly among the more mature technology markets like Japan, Singapore, Australia. Acceptance has been pretty good over the last 6 months, I would say.
Yeah, and just to sort of round out the answer to your question, because you asked about the analyst community. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So both companies were seen as Magic Quadrant leaders even before the merger. Yep. The effect of the merger has only stood to make us go further up the X and farther out the Y axis. So we're starting to put separation between us and others in the space, and so the analysts are very excited about what we're doing. I think they recognize the comprehensive nature of what the platform will deliver and the end-to-end capabilities, whether it's vaulting, just in time, least privilege, DevOps workflows, all throughout the privilege lifecycle. We have solutions that will be served up in a cohesive way, and I think they're excited about that. I also think they're excited about what has long been understood about our organization, which is that the ease of use and ease of adoption of our products. And so what really distinguishes us from our competitors in the market is that our products are very usable. So you can even sort of see this by going to our website. We have trial downloads of the product. So if you go to delineate.com, you can download the full product for all of our offerings. You can have it up and running in a matter of minutes or installed in a matter of minutes, have it up and actually vaulting secrets within hours. And so that experience and that ease of use drives higher levels of adoptions with our customer. And security products, whether it's PAM products or any other security product, are really only as good as the human beings behind the keyboards that adopt and implement them. And so if they're complicated, if they create friction in your business processes, they wind up being unrealized. And that is really the distinction between us and our competition. We also require far fewer sort of ongoing services to maintain the product. So when you think about what it takes to really bring a privilege project to life and the amount of full-time resources and professional services that would be involved in it, exponentially less with our solutions, because the intuitive nature of the UX, the common backbone of the technology. So everything being built on a Microsoft stack. So if it's on-prem, it could be .NET application, SQL Server, IaaS. If it's cloud-based, it's Azure-centric. And so a lot of the infrastructure that you would use to run these products are commonly held technologies where you already probably have folks within your staff that know how to do these things, as opposed to proprietary products require subject matter expertise from the vendors. And so this is another thing that you'll see over and over, whether it's Gartner or other analysts, or even the market itself. When you see customer feedback, they talk about our ease of use or ease of adoption, fast time to value, products doing what they say they're going to do, and not requiring tons of sweat equity to maintain them over time.
Yeah, it's great to hear of a merger that is 1 + 1 = 4 or 5 rather than 1.5.
That's right.
Cool.
So you mentioned a little bit about this before, but can you tell us about the major cybersecurity challenges that Delinea's products and services are specifically designed to overcome in a bit more detail?
Sure. So, as we said before, it is interesting that we still see cyber breaches that involve circumstances where, it'll come out in the news where it'll say, someone's left a admin password or, a company name with 123 added to it. This still goes on to this day. There's no way to automate that out of human beings per se, but the adoption of our products really mitigates that risk immensely by enforcing password hygiene and sort of easing how the reducing the friction between how users interact with their passwords so that they can maintain strong password hygiene and have good security practices despite not adding friction to their processes. Above and beyond that, we're starting to see more and more identities as machine identities. So there's an expansion of devices that are being added onto the network, whether it's IoT devices or OT devices. In fact, we heard about sort of an interesting data compromise that happened with a casino where somebody had actually garnered credentials from a thermometer that was in a fish tank that was networked back to the
I remember
organization.
hearing about that.
Yeah. So, we still see this being the primary driver of why organizations look at our products. The other is really about regulatory requirements, and there's some unique regulatory requirements in the Australia, New Zealand markets, as well as in Asia. And I think Wahab probably can talk a little bit about this and what he's seeing.
Yes, I think I mentioned earlier on about the threat landscape increasing. We see PAM as the glue to all of the entire threat ecosystem. And there's always often a need to correlate access, right, through PAM. So you've seen governments, especially Australia, focusing on the essential aid, critical infrastructure. These are all centered around or predicated around privileged access, right? So there's going to be a very key role for us to play in all of this. If you look at audit compliance, typically when people go into auditing, they want to ensure systems have in the early days, two-factor authentication, and we now go into multi-factor authentication. So again, we've got a cornerstone. We are the cornerstone of many of these compliance regulatory systems. We'll play a very key role there.
Yep, and we also see an explosion of interest around cybersecurity insurance and the sort of requirements that we're seeing from underwriters around the adoption of security products to help mitigate risk and sort of give guidance around what the premiums would be respective to cyber insurance.
Now, Delinea also launched new research recently, which I'll link to in the article that accompanies this video. And in this research, you discovered that security professionals are running to keep up. So can you please tell us more about this?
Yeah, so I think about 65% believe that identity security remains a top priority for their organization. It's not really well understood at a board level or at their executive leaders. Half of them allow privileged users to access sensitive systems and data without requiring MFA. To Wahab's point, a lot of folks think about MFA simply at logon, but MFA really can be applied throughout the organization. So whether it's MFA to gain access to elevate authority, whether it's MFA to use something like root or sudo, you want to start thinking about using multi-factor authentication to break the chain of lateral movement when organizations get compromised. Yep. So, and then only about less than half, about 44% of organizations were managing machine identities. And so back to sort of our earlier conversation, the explosion of the attack surface in terms of machines, more types of machines, more variation in terms of what's at the edge is causing, an increase in vulnerability. And organizations aren't really doing a great job around securing the credentials associated with them.
Yeah, nobody ever thought that a thermometer needed to be behind a firewall.
Exactly. Especially when you get more, there'll be a greater dependence on IoT type devices or edge devices, right?
Sure, yeah.
And these are not dumb devices; they're smart devices. Some of which, like smart TVs, have their own operating system, and people tend to forget that these needs to be serviced and have access through, applications and so on. So that creates a big problem for access.
And a lot of times the thought process sort of ends at the line of business compute. So, I think less than half the respondents to the research that you were talking about felt that they had the right strategy in place. And I'll bet you if you ask that question around whether or not they feel they have the right strategy for non-business compute, so OT environments, IoT environments, that number would drop even more. So we are seeing an increased interest in organizations that want to apply these technologies in SCADA environments, in medical devices, all kinds of other interesting use cases that go out beyond just sort of your traditional business compute environment. But we really see a lack of sort of widespread understanding of that, particularly in senior levels of management of these organizations.
Yeah, but if you go back to the report, right, the core of it is this, right? We found that 84% of CISOs we poll, or C-level we post, experience identity-related breach or some form of attack that uses stolen credentials. That still remains the mainstay of the report, and something that all of them have to deal with.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I saw CrowdStrike, who we don't view as a competitor in any way, but they were out publicly talking about their earnings report. And you don't necessarily associate CrowdStrike with a identity security company readily. You think of sort of endpoint protection and remediation. But even they're talking about the fact that the vast majority of data breaches involve compromised credentials and identity. And so you're starting to see, a broader consciousness of across multiple types of software vendors in the cyberspace, really acknowledging that identity is at the core of many of these breaches.
So look, I'm going to link to that research, and there are a lot of interesting stats there. I do recommend people read it. But is there anything else you'd just like to highlight from the report before we go to the next question?
No, I just encourage folks to read it. We surveyed over 2,100 IT security leaders across 24 countries. So it was truly a global effort. And so it's a lot of good key takeaways in there. And I think what you'll find is that identity security is a priority, and that organizations should be thinking a lot about how they're managing their most privileged identities and how they're applying these technologies in their environment. So I'd encourage everybody to read the survey.
Yeah. Now, Delinea also has a new extended PAM vision called XPM, into which you're heavily investing. So can you please tell us a bit more about this?
Sure. So XPM is the idea about really taking privilege management further than the traditional vault. So a lot of people, when you talk about privilege management, they think about vaulting. It's sort of become a little bit synonymous. XPM is the idea that privilege really goes well beyond vaulting. Privilege can exist in all kinds of different places. So the traditional sysadmin is the use case that most people are familiar with. I'm an IT professional. I'm interacting with heightened levels of credentials to do the work that I do. And so we have to protect that. But really, privilege could exist in lots and lots of places. I run a sales organization for the company. I have access to our Salesforce.com system. And as a result of that, I have privilege. I have the privilege to look at our reports associated with our sales pipelines. I have marketing colleagues that have proprietary information that they're looking at. Organizations have engineering functions. There's all kinds of different roles within an organization that have access to systems that, in fact, are privileged. And so we're thinking about how do we bring the discipline of privilege management beyond the IT user and into line of business users, extending it out to our supply chain, our vendors that are coming in and gaining third-party access to our systems, and then, of course, machine identities, whether they're service accounts, whether they're IoT devices, whether it's laptops. Privilege can exist in lots and lots of places. And so the idea that just locking up your domain admin credentials and that's going to be sort of privilege management is really a bygone thought. And extended privilege management is the vision to really think about privilege through the entire life cycle, from the onboarding to the understanding of what access and what rights somebody should have during their journey with an organization, to the decommissioning and then dispositioning of credentials. That entire life cycle, regardless of whether it's an individual, whether it's an employee, an internal employee, external contractor, partner, a machine, or privilege as code, we want to make sure that we're brokering and securing that interaction for organizations.
Yeah, so let me just add to that life cycle point that Damon mentioned, saying we don't exist in isolation in a security system, ecosystem. So the ability to correlate to other aspects of cybersecurity, like SIEM, network security, edge security. These are the key aspects of our platform.
Sure. Now, you also mentioned before that people can get started with the products in minutes, and you can have things in the vault within hours. And obviously, this will be different for each customer, nevertheless, if they become or when they become a Delinea customer. But how quickly is everything integrated and protected? What's the typical onboarding process for a new customer?
Sure. So we have a service delivery capability within the organization. We like to partner with local partners. We have a lot of we have a big partner ecosystem throughout the world, and particularly here in Australia, New Zealand, and quickly emerging in Asia as well. And so we find that our partners on the ground, they have a greater degree of hyper locality in terms of understanding the customer's needs, and we like for them to do our service delivery. And so we've put the ability in place for organizations, our partner community, to interact and get certified very easily at no cost, to skill up on our products, and that they can work with the customers directly. We also have an internal service delivery bench that's more limited, and we like to call upon them for some of the most sophisticated use cases and most difficult engagements. But a typical onboarding engagement might be anywhere from 4 or 5 days, end to end for a smaller organization, all the way through maybe a month or two for larger entities. And privilege is a journey. So, Wahab mentioned earlier, organizations typically have a scope of what they're trying to achieve, sort of depending upon where they're at in the maturity curve. And so, we have package service offerings as well as bespoke service offerings that can be tailored around where you're at in that journey. And then we like to work with our customers long term to help them mature that journey along the way. And so we have a lot of materials around maturity indexes, and you can map against those. And we greatly encourage you to sort of talk to representation with the company, and we can talk you through what a privileged journey might look like with us. But I think what you'll find, again, that's highly unique is that the relationship to the amount of services necessary to deploy the products versus what you would invest in the software is much, much lesser with our offerings.
Yeah, so to give a bit of stats, speed of implementation of ease of use is one of the key value propositions. Over the last few implementations that I've been personally involved in, we've managed to cut down implementation and deployment by anywhere between 50 to 60% compared to our competitors. We really do that fast.
Wahab, I would say that we're very committed and focused to growing our ANZ and Asia businesses. I've spent my first week here in Australia. Had a fantastic experience. Met with some really great partners and customers. I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity here. I think a lot of the sort of business drivers around compliance and the Essential 8 is really tailor-made for our solution set. So I'm excited about coming back and spending more time here. Wahab, you might want to comment more about the region as well.
Yeah. So again, we've increased our footprint here dramatically over the past 6 to 8 months. And all I can say is that greater things to come. We are now present almost everywhere in the major countries in Asia Pacific. We've traditionally invested a lot in Australia. We've doubled down in Australia, New Zealand. We have direct presence in New Zealand right now. So again, better and bigger things to come for us. We have embarked on a really comprehensive enablement program for our partners and as well as our customers. So you'll see more of that coming soon.
So how do you both see Delinea evolving over the next couple of years?
So I think we'll continue to fulfill the XPM vision, which is adding value, automation, efficiency, and security around everywhere where privilege exists. I think that the company's future is quite bright. We continue to have both a organic and non-organic strategy to complement our product portfolio. I think with the platform, again, the new platform that's coming out, when you have a control plane that will allow us to snap in discrete applications, it provides the ability for us to be thinking through where the next sort of opportunity is for us to offer up, high value applications that address specific use cases for our customers. So I think you'll see us making more communications around the cloud entitlements and infrastructure management space, as well as potentially deeper investments in end user, line of business users type experiences, mobile experience, I think there's a lot of potential in a variety of different areas that we're investing in now.
Yeah, so you've heard many say that this is the decade of Asia Pacific, right? And we're only just beginning. So I do expect us to grow organically further. We do expect business to grow rapidly. Asia Pacific growth is one of the highest, if not the highest in the company. And so we expect also adoption to be higher, driven by what I mentioned earlier about zero trust, about compliance and regulations, about move to the cloud, comprehensive move to the cloud. These will be all augurs well for us in terms of how we actually value add to our customers.
So what are each of your final messages to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, I'd say, we have a funny bumper sticker. It says passwords are like underwear. You should, change them frequently and make sure they're, kept up to cleanliness. So, password management is a huge issue. If you're not thinking about this, you should be. And don't just think about it in simple terms. Think about comprehensive privilege across your organization. And I greatly encourage you to engage with us. Get the educational materials, the surveys. Learn as much as you can, and then we'd love to work with you. Like Wahab said, we're making big investments in Australia, New Zealand, as well as Asia. And I just look forward to getting out in the field and meeting as many customers and partners as possible.
Yeah. So we've given you the stats on how important privilege access is. So if you haven't looked at it, my advice is do look at it. But do look at it holistically, because like I said, it's a journey, right? It's a life cycle of how we actually do PAM. And to those customers or prospects who's coming on board with us, we'll be with you all the way in that journey.
Well, Damon Tompkins, Chief Revenue Officer at Delinea, and Wahab Yusoff, the Vice President of Asia Pacific and Japan at Delinea, thank you very much for your time. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying Australia. I wish you the best of success, and I do hope we can talk again in the future.
Thanks so much, Alex.
Much appreciated.
Take care.
Take care.